Please stop calling him Lando No Wins. Guys, it was so many years that Formula 1 didn't deliver a beautiful race like this one. 6 drivers playing it out, packed in just 10 seconds. Then the strategies, the overtakes. In Miami, everything happened. And in today's video, we have so many things to talk about. We will analyze the race, the penalties, the new upgrades, the Adrian Newey departure. Let's put everything in order, starting with the Naska summary. Let's talk about track action. We will talk about Newey and penalties later. Miami was a sprint race weekend, the second one in a row. McLaren came with a huge upgrade. So huge that basically we're talking about a B version of the car. Mercedes and V-Carb had a new floor, and then there were minor upgrades here and there. Ferrari instead chose to wait for Imola to bring the big upgrades. In Miami, however, the Ferraris were a bit blue. That special livery was to celebrate the new partnership with HP, but the darker blue patches were also a bit history recalling. Yeah, because I made a video on the Italian channel, let me know if you want it on the English channel. I don't know if you know it, but in the 60s, Ferrari won the World Championship with a blue painted car, and basically that happened because the red is not the color of Ferrari, but it's the color of Italy in motorsports. And in those years, Enzo Ferrari had a fight with the Italian Federation, and so he decided to get rid of the Italian license and race with the American license with the blue colors. That's a crazy story. However, back to Miami, only one free practice on Friday. As usual, it's impossible to understand much. Well, there is one guy who understood nothing, and he's Charles Leclerc, because he spun after 5 minutes, he got stuck in the middle of the road, and while everybody was passing and he was trying to make a maneuver, his clutch overheated, and he was forced to stop, and that makes you understand that a Formula 1 car is not like a road car, but you have a limited amount of maneuvers that you can do until things start to overheat and you have to stop. This is very common for race cars. For example, with Euro NASCAR, the engineer always told me not to keep the clutch down for too long because I would risk breaking it like Formula 1 cars. So Leclerc forced to go in qualifying blindly, but Ferrari and McLaren, however, looked very fit for Miami. Sprint qualifying. SQ1 and SQ2 had to be run on mediums for regulations, and the McLarens flew, especially with Lando Norris, which had all the upgrades fitted on the car, while Piastri only had 50% of the upgrades. And if you're wondering why, basically they had no time to produce the upgrades for both cars. Big surprise, the 2 Mercedes out of the SQ2. So we get to SQ3 where everyone uses softs, and at this point everyone discovers that the softs are impossible to exploit in the qualifying laps. Yeah, because as soon as you start to push, the surface overheats and you lose grip. So Verstappen completed a mediocre lap, so much that in the moment that Lambiase informed him that he made the pole position, his answer was lol, and everyone else? Well, there was Leclerc right behind, Ricciardo with a stunning 4th, and the 2 McLarens missing. Piastri P6, Norris P9. We get to the sprint race, which was a little bit boring race. And that made me think that it would have been impossible to overtake in Miami for the race. It was hot, and as soon as the driver get close to the car in front, tires and engine overheated, and it was impossible to try and attack. Verstappen manages and wins after defending from the Leclerc attack at the start. Then we have Perez and an incredible Ricciardo in P4. After a fantastic race, all defending on Sainz. Norris retires immediately after a contact with Hamilton in the Aston Martin at the start, while Hamilton becomes protagonist of a very nice fight with Magnussen throughout the whole race. And these were the sprint top 8s, with Haas and V-Carb also in the points. We get to the qualifying, Saturday afternoon. Again, interpreting the soft was hell. Ricciardo out in Q1, 18th. We'll get to it later. Aston Martin's out in Q2 with a setup crisis. And listen to this, Mercedes and Norris tried their luck using the mediums in Q3. That was a desperate move. In the end, it was a battle between Leclerc and Verstappen, with Verstappen in pole position and Leclerc P2 by just 1/10 of a second. Then Sainz and Perez, the McLarens, the Mercedes, Hülkenberg and Tsunoda. We get to the race. Incredible. You know, that chemistry, that mix of high temperatures, delivery track, made it happen that McLaren's, Ferrari and Red Bull had a similar pace. And therefore, a beautiful race came out with the top 6 very close. At the start, Max maintains the lead while Leclerc makes a mistake. Until Perez tries to overtake everyone and almost crashed into Verstappen. Now guys, if the multiverse theory is real, there are now 2 universes in the world. One universe, which is the one we're living in, and the other universe where Checo Perez on Monday was fired from Red Bull for having crashed into Verstappen. And the distance between these two universes is just like, 1 inch. Luckily or unfortunately, nothing happened. Leclerc gets back to P2 until Piastri attacks him and gets to the second place. At this point, a very strategic race begins. Verstappen in front builds a 3 seconds gap lead. Leclerc remains in the DRS zone of Piastri, with Sainz following behind, until when Perez stops, Lando Norris has clear track ahead. And at this point, he can show up the best pace of the race. Perez is the first to pit for hards, then Leclerc, until Max goes wide in the chicane and hits the pole, leaving the pole on track. Virtual safety car out, but none of the top drivers take advantage of it. Shortly after, Verstappen pits, and Leclerc seems to have a better pace than Verstappen at the beginning. So Leclerc overtakes Piastri, and the only one left extending the first stint is Lando Norris. And this is the move of the century. Yes, because Magnussen and Sargent crash into each other, a safety car comes out and Lando Norris in P1. And in this moment, everyone is wondering, will be Norris capable of keeping Verstappen behind? The answer was yes. Lando Norris flew an incredible pace, faster than Verstappen, and so he gets his first career win. Verstappen finishes P2, losing from Norris and without being able to run away from Leclerc, which finishes P3 close to Verstappen. Sainz P4, but he got penalized at the end of the race for a contact with Piastri, which we will analyze later. So Perez goes to P4, Hamilton P6, and then Tsunoda, Russell, Alonso, and Ocon scoring the first point for Alpine. Now, let's talk about the top and the flops of the weekend. As usual, in the sprint races, we have 5 tops and 5 flops. The first top of the weekend, Lando Norris. What a performance. Well, actually, I was ready to tell you how the McLaren wasted a promising weekend in Miami. And, well, they partly did. Because Lando paid his price for starting in the middle of the field in the sprint. In the race, though, boy, what a performance. Norris was patient in the first stint. Until from the moment that Perez stopped and he had free track, he started to fly. Okay, the safety car helped him. But the thing is that before the safety car, he was in P1 because he was able to extend the stint by saving the tires and by showing an excellent pace. And then when he put the new hards, nobody was able to catch up with him. Amazing cold blood, amazing pace. That is a well-deserved victory. And that bit of luck was just to compensate the bad lucks he had in the last years. By the way, you can see that Verstappen and Norris are friends, not because Verstappen let him win, because it would never happen that Max lets win a friend, but this is the first time that we see Verstappen in P2 smiling. And yeah, can you imagine if instead of Norris, that was Perez in P1? The second top of the weekend is Hülkenberg. Hulk is in super form in this first part of 2024. In Miami, he went in Q3 twice. In the sprint, he scored points in P7. In the race, the safety car didn't really help him. In fact, he finished 11th behind Ocon, but the pace was a top 10 pace. And so I understand Audi and Sauber, who put him under contract for the next 2 years. Third top of the weekend, Esteban Ocon. Once again, Esteban surprised. In Miami, I don't know if you know it, but Alpine was able to reduce the weight of the cars because they were overweight for the first races, starting to final race around the minimum weight. Now, I don't know if you know it, I'll make a brief explanation. The Formula 1 regulations, as well for almost every car racing championship, impose a minimum weight for car plus driver. And that is the reason why after the race, all the drivers are weighted. So if the car plus driver is too lightweight, they get a penalty. And what if they are overweight? Nothing happens. They are just slower in the race. So Alpine was racing overweight for these first races. Now from Miami, thanks to some upgrades, they were able to reduce the weight and start final racing around the minimum weight. At the beginning of the weekend, Gasly looked fitter than Ocon. But then in the race, Ocon showed a better pace. He handled the safety car pretty well, and despite a battle with Alonso, he kept a good pace and managed to finish P10. And that is a super important point for Alpine. Fourth stop of the weekend, Charles Leclerc. Okay, he messed up in the free practice, okay? But then he did an incredible weekend. Guys, he got P2 in the sprint qualifying without driving in for practice. That's insane. And then, great sprint race, always in the Verstappen zone. Then, almost pole position in the Saturday qualifying. And then, besides the mistake at the start and besides the overtake from Piastri, he was able to recover the position and finish P3, quite close to Verstappen. Fifth top of the weekend, Daniel Ricciardo from the sprint. Okay, I mean, P4 in the sprint qualifying, P4 in the sprint race with the V-carb. Okay, the new floor, okay, the new chassis, but this Daniel looks so different from the beginning of the season Daniel. So is it really the new chassis that make the difference? Or he just changed something in his mindset? For now, we don't know. Now let's talk about the 5 flops of the weekend. First of all, Daniel Ricciardo of the race. Guys, how can you finish a sprint race in P4 and then qualify for the race in P18? Well, in Q1 he suffered from tires overheating, exactly like Norris and almost everyone else. Then he had 3 position penalties from China, so he was forced to start last, but he struggled to get back from the back. He didn't get help from the safety car. Well, that was a bad race. Second flop of the weekend, the Mercedes. Guys, in 2024, Red Bull lost 2 races. One against Sainz and the other one against Norris with McLaren. And McLaren is a Mercedes customer. That's a bit embarrassing for Toto Wolff and Mercedes. The W15, even if it was updated, it's just not competitive. We're talking about a car which is not at the level of the top 3 cars. So a big change of pace is needed. Third flop of the weekend, Fernando Alonso. Now, in Miami, the Aston Martins were in crisis. The car didn't digest the track, the asphalt, and the temperatures. Not at all. It happens. Exactly like it happens that sometimes Fernando is slower than Stroll. It's not really common, but sometimes it happens. But what made me smile is how Nando reacted. Because for him, since the FIA did not penalize Hamilton for the sprint start chaos, Fernando believes that the FIA and the stewards are targeting the Spaniards. Now, come on, Nando, let's not exaggerate. I mean, there is nothing bad if you admit that it was just a bad weekend. It happens. By the way, in the sprint race incident at the start, I believe that there was just a race incident. Nobody should be penalized for that. Fourth flop of the weekend, Kevin Magnussen. Let's get this straight. If in a single sprint race you get 3 penalties for a total amount of 35 seconds, and then you get kicked in Q1, and then in the race you get 10 seconds penalty for an incident, then you serve the penalty, but you serve it wrong, so you get an additional 10 seconds penalty. I mean, you messed it up. So, nothing else to say. Too bad that Kevin Magnussen was not the only culprit of this bad weekend, because the 5th flop of the weekend is the FIA. Now, I just didn't like the way the stewards handled what happened this weekend. There are 2 things that I can't understand. First of all, the Magnussen penalty in the sprint. Guys, Magnussen, while fighting to keep Hamilton behind, he made a little mistake. He cut the chicane, he gained 0.2, 0.3 of a second, and what he got? 10 seconds penalty. He wasn't even fighting, he was ahead. Guys, do you understand that he got the same penalty that Hamilton got in 2021 for sending Verstappen at 300 kilometers an hour in the wall? I really don't understand it. And you know why I struggle even more to understand it is that after that penalty, considering that Hülkenberg was in P7, Magnussen at that point, to make Hülkenberg gain advantage, he started to fight like crazy, doing some crazy stuff, just because his race was wasted anyway. And I would have done the same. So the question is, why they didn't just order him to give the position to Hamilton? All that mess wouldn't have happened. After the chaos with Hamilton, Andrea Stella, McLaren team principal, stated that K-Mag had an unsportsmanship behavior and that even deserved a stop weekend. You know what? Bullshit. Everyone would have done the same. And with that behavior, Verstappen won a world title in 2021. So that's racing. The second thing that I don't understand from the steward is the 5 seconds penalty to Sainz. I just don't get it. A few laps earlier, Piastri did an impossible braking on Sainz, he missed the corner, he forced Sainz off track, and Sainz, in order to avoid the crash, did not steer into Piastri. A few laps later, Sainz did a crazy braking, he even left room for Piastri without forcing him off track. Piastri turned into him, and they penalized Sainz. I just don't get it. Really, I don't get it. Why not penalizing Piastri and penalizing Sainz? I mean, this is Formula 1. The level of decisions should be better. Now, let's talk about tech. Because today's Nascar Tech will be focused on McLarens, which brought a huge upgrade package to Miami. That is almost a B version of the car. And that is a jump similar to what they did in 2023 in Austria, where they totally revolutionized the car. This weekend, everything was new on Lando's car. Front wing, side pods, floor, engine cover, beam wing. Now, rather than showing all the new stuff, I want to take advantage of this amazing photo taken by Omar Alvarez as they were returning the Norris car after it retired from the sprint, because finally we can see a 2024 floor. Yeah, because considering the cars normally don't go upside down, we never see floors. Unless something like Norris happens. I want to show you a few curiosities, which perhaps few people know about it, partly because floors are always hidden. In this photo, you can see the light blue arrows and the number 1. Those are the floor fences, which are the baffles that push outwards most of the air that goes into the Venturi's channels. These baffles push it toward the edges of the floor, where there is a mini diffuser. Here you can see the Mercedes one, just updated, and that mini diffuser creates downforce. And just think of that, creating downforce from the sides of the car. That mini diffuser also, along with everything else on the edge, protects the real work of the floor, which happens in the middle. The number 2 and the red arrows point this out to us. Now, think about the rear diffuser, which is that component like this on the back of the car. The diffuser is fed only by the innermost channel, because only the air that passes where the red arrows indicate ends up at the diffuser. And it passes between the chassis, as you see, and the first floor fence, the innermost one. So this air at some point meets a whole series of digs and steps, all of which are super visible near the number 2. And these are Red Bull inventions which are used to better manage what's happening beneath the floor, to avoid porpoising and always have the most load. Finally, the number 3 and the green arrows, which indicates that cascade of fins is super powerful. And do you know why? Because it creates downforce in a component directly connected to the wheels. Because just think about that, the downforce created by the floor and by the wings doesn't go directly in the wheels, which are the only thing that keeps the car on the ground, but they have to pass through the suspensions. Instead, these small components transfer all the downforce directly to the wheels without passing through the suspensions. And that's why these tiny things are so powerful. Now, let's go to the too hot to handle, the hot topic of the weekend. And you already know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Adrian Newey. Between Shanghai and Miami, many rumors emerged about a farewell between Adrian Newey and Red Bull. It just seemed impossible, exactly like it seemed impossible that Hamilton was leaving Mercedes, but actually it was true. Now, let's try to put together all the rumors, all the backstories, starting from what happened. What happened is that for about a year, Newey had been thinking about leaving Red Bull. He's definitely tired, just as he might want a new challenge. He didn't like the Horner affair and the power fight inside Red Bull, just as he didn't like that his role in the conception of the ground effect Red Bulls was somewhat belittled. Well, yes, because Christian Horner and the technical director Wache in the past few months have emphasized that Red Bull is a work of a big team of engineers, not just Adrian Newey. And Adrian doesn't like things like this. It has happened before, when he decided to leave McLaren almost 20 years ago. I'm about to post a video in the Italian channel talking about the story. Let me know if you want the English version as well. And is it true? Sure, as it happens in all teams. Mark Hughes on The Race explained it very well. Although Newey doesn't work every day on Red Bulls, it was his insight that made his latest ground effect car so special. He understood that the suspension design would be crucial. He designed it in a certain way. He gave the aerodynamic inputs. And he reassured everyone about the regulation changes of 2023. I don't know if you remember, but so many people thought that those changes would have favored the Mercedes concept. Instead, Newey, he realized that they favored the Red Bull concept, and in the end, he was right. So, Newey is less involved, okay, but he was crucial in creating these ground effects Red Bulls. And we can understand that he wants recognition, as we also understand that his colleagues do not want to remain in the shadows. Is it a Red Bull loss? Yes, a big one, especially for 2026, when there will be new rules. Where will Newey go? Maybe on vacation, to rest? Some rumors are talking about Williams, but actually the most serious and initiated contacts are with the Red team based in Italy, in Maranello. And Newey, who is not a fool, knew very well that he would have been photographed during the race. And so, what was he doing before the sprint race? He was looking straight away to a red car on the grid. Let's go now with the Nascar votes. Magnussen 4.5, Rog Kev. Hulkenberg 8, Dazzling. Ju 5, Anonymous. Bottas 5, Infuriated. Ricardo 7, divided by 2, half excellent. Tsunoda 7, Great race. Sargent 5.5, the nightmare continues. Albon 5.5, distracted. Ocon 8.5, ready. Gasly 7, good pace. Stroll 6.5, better than Nando. Alonso 5.5, did he have fun last night? Piastri 8, unlucky. Norris 10, well deserved. Hamilton 7.5, a few flashes. Russell 6, fatigued. Sainz 7.5, high level. Leclerc 8.5, scathing. Perez 6, returning to the Paris of always. Verstappen 8.5, what a disappointment, Max, I don't recognize you. On to the next GP and beyond. We will go racing in Italy, Imola, 2 hours drive from my house. It's gonna be the first Italian race of the season. Enjoy our passion for Formula 1, and I just hope that the show will be as good as Miami. I forgot, Ferrari is supposed to bring some developments, nothing big. Just an almost all new SF24. And if the jump is similar to the McLaren jump, I mean, what can we say? Are we gonna have fun?